Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon where you live around the world. Oh my goodness, what a jumbled video I made for part 2 of this series. It was, however, more orientated around the Sketchup type understanding of, or the use of Sketchup and our application of it. It is also, I think, despite my admission that it was a rubbishy old video, worthwhile. It touched on a lot of the drawing or the understandings of drawing that I think is required of us to know when we're manipulating odd shapes. Well, not odd, but like into our mind we've got a lot of choices that unless we follow and understand well, we could trip ourselves up with. In the very first video, I also showed you the method I'd never even contemplated about as using it as a check that Paul disintegrates. He explodes the shape so that it is sticky, and when you move one surface, it moves all the other ones. Again, I say that I repeat this now, and I say that is something I wouldn't have thought of to use in that manner as a check. It's a really good one, but I, like him, I would perhaps want to say make a copy, fiddle with it and do what I want, and then perhaps delete it and then go back to the original. Anyway, I digress. In the previous video, I talked about understanding or appreciating the center point of the structure and its radii. The radii, when I'm talking about that, is the maximum distance from the center of the dome to this point. There's no point greater than at these points here. So that's the radii of the dome, which we drew in quite easily by dropping a line down vertically and then making, well, that would have gone from that point down to that point, same thing, and then from this point here, the point on the hexagon, to the opposite point on the hexagon, the one that's at the rear and underneath, and at the intersection point is the center of the dome, and these two lines are the radii of the dome, which happen to be that diagonal from our base model, as we showed in the previous video. I hadn't appreciated that that was the radii prior to the last video. It clicked. Even though I drew it in, I'd been using it because a good student follows his instructor, or her instructor, of course. I'm old. But you use the information sometimes without understanding what the hell you're doing with it. But then it clicked. That's the radii of the dome. Yay. It is also an odd number. It's 13 something, and it's an approximate number. I can make that, as I also showed in the last video, in an exact dimension, which we will, just not now. Because what I want to do is to rotate that up into the center of this triangle. Now, here's the question. How do we do that? Well, glad you asked. I'm going to use my tape measure, go from the apex to the center of the line there, from the apex to the center of the line there. Well, guess what, guys and gals? That's your center of your triangle. If I were to draw a line, and I'm showing you the hard way first, if I were to draw a line from there to there, what would it show? Well, it would show a line from there to there. Wow! And you don't want that, do you? You want the radii to be there. Well, how do you rotate your radii line up to there? Because it becomes a little bit more complicated. and I'm going to show you the easy way soon, I can rotate it round horizontally from that point to that point. That's easy. But now how do I rotate it up to that point? Well, I can take this line and take a guide and put it down on the intersection point there. Are there other ways, David? Why, yes, there are. There are about 3 or 4, there's at least 3 different ways of doing it. I'm only showing you 2, the hard way, this way. Now I can rotate that line. Now I use my rotation tool. I left click it and hold down the key there, and I draw it out so that it's along that line. I now know that the rotation is along that axis. I can then take that line, the radii line, and rotate it up until it intersects, and you can see the cross. As soon as it is, read the dialog box, intersection, I have got the radii going through the dead center of this triangle. Yay! So that's not really that hard, even though that's the hard way. Get rid of all the guides. So now that we've got this radii line, I'm going to rotate it. And I'm going to rotate it around horizontally, from there, around. How many degrees? Well, I just happen to know that it's 72 degrees, because I've already mentioned that, times 4. Well, that's interesting, because that's created 5 points that are exactly the same distance from the center of the dome as that. What does that give us? Well, I'm going to join everything together, and when I do this next line, that's going to happen. And I am going to hide everything else. And that was the shape I showed in the very first video. I can select that. I'm going to make that a group. I'm not worried about what's underneath. This is actually just, it's a scaffold upon which we make this, and we don't really need this. I was just making in fact I'll hide that. I was just making the comment that this is a pentagon based pyramid. Quite a tall pyramid, but you know, be that as it may. In fact, I'm going to have a fiddle while we're talking. Make group, rotate around, rotate it around that way, 180 degrees. So there we've got a pentagon based pyramid, a geometrically accurate pyramid. Is it of any use to you? Well, I don't know. It's not to me, but it might be to you. Are there other pentagon shapes? Pyramids? Yes. Okay, what do I want to do? Undo that. Unhide everything. Because what I want to do now is use this pentagon to create the, paused for dramatic effect, this shape here. That it's not the one I'm using, but it's the yeah, it is one I will use, but it's not for this exercise. So I go back to the other screen. So I want to be able to use this. I can, however, in fact I'll just hide some of these. I can, however, delete that. Don't actually need it, because I've got what I need there, and I've still, and I could create it if I had have deleted it, I've still got my points for the radii there around which some of this will generate. Some. Now that I take and I can rotate round how many degrees? Oh, 120. Type in 120. Well, isn't that interesting? When you see a precise, accurate dimension or number down in the bottom right hand corner, it is accurate. And rotating this around 120 degrees allowed the surfaces to mate up. Yippee. Now I can simply rotate that from any point where the center line is, and I can rotate that round now and copy it. 72 degrees times 4. And in quick order, I have got, in fact, I should have grouped that. Hide, and oops, I might have, no I didn't. Thought I'd actually hidden another surface. No, don't do that, David. Okay, so now we're back to here. So this is, and I keep on using that phrase, geometrically accurate. Doesn't mean to say it's the one that you need, but it's geometrically accurate. Now this is obviously half a dome, but it's all pentagons. Now you could rotate this round, which we could do, and not go, oh god, here we go. I could, I'll make a group just now, and I'm not going to do any fancy stuff. I'm just going to simply rotate it move it down, and I'm just going to move it down to there and rotate it round that point until such time as that hits that, just to prove the point. There's your pentagon only dome. Can that be used? Well, the answer is yes, it can be. The other question then is how? That is a different question. But you can see how easy it is to create your geometrically accurate shapes from this. And there's no glitchiness or no gappiness in the structure. Rotating it round or creating it via data entry or the measurements here, I suggest possible, but nah, I wouldn't be doing. I'll be doing it this way. Oh boy, here we go. Once more, as taught to me by Paul Robinson. There are several others doing exactly the same thing, and where did Paul learn it? After all, you know, he learned it from someone as well. Don't care. He was where I learned it from, and why I reference him 9 times out of 10. Now, where do we go from this? Well, I'm going to create the dome off of this, a dome off of this, and then I'm going to show you a completely different approach to doing the dome using this. The benefit, well, sorry, not the benefit, part of what we want to, I'm going to back a little bit before I make that comment. We have got the line in here, which I'm going to suggest is a remnant of our previous structure, and I said it wasn't scaled. I know it's about 1300 and something long. 1396. I should have, or could have, ought to have scaled it. Why? Good process. But I can still scale it now. I know that is the correct, in fact, I'm waffling a little bit. I'll go vertical. I know that that guideline is going to be dead center of this pentagon. How do I know, David? Well, if I go from apex to middle of that line, apex to middle of the line there, and if I zoomed in, I know it's dead center. And that's accurate. Not only precise, it is accurate. So if I was to draw this, rotate this line up, no, I'll back off of that. Get rid of the guide. I'll do what I'm thinking. I can put a parallel guide. Now I can take it from this line here or the red axis. Click it there. Rotate it up. I'll rotate and copy from that point up 72 degrees. Oh, it's not center. Well, why is that? Well, that is one of the reasons I drew those lines in to begin with. Talking center, center. Why didn't it rotate up to the center of there? Well, we'll have another look. And this is why you have to have the process. If I go from this point to this point, and type in 72 degrees, shouldn't it be 72? Well, it's not center. How come that's the case? How far out is it? Well, I'm going to show you. Oops. Guide. It's a long way out. And that's when I'm doing anything in my building profession, I like process. Why? Because it stops you making assumptions based upon ignorance. If the process is robust, and it need be, it's these things that you latch onto when you're doing anything, doesn't matter being a builder or anything, you know that the process will help you. If you do two things and they don't match up, one of them's wrong. But hopefully over the years you take the understanding that the process will save you, and it will point out errors like this. So what's that? What is that degree? No idea. No idea whatsoever. Should it have been the same radii? Well, yeah. But I knew I was doing something that was non-process or method orientated, and I kind of guessed I was going to make a boo-boo, and I did. Right, we'll get back to there. The center of the dome should be the center of the dome. Yes. In fact, I'll get rid of the guides. I'll just pause it here, and I'll come back with a little bit more info for you, so don't go away. Okay, we're back again, and I had a bit of a pause because the words that were coming out of my mouth weren't making sense. Well, obviously you already knew that before I did even, but no, it was just that, again, as I said, the processes that I use building have been ones that have come over the years, and the ones that have proved themselves robust, as I mentioned. And this one here, the puzzle for me even was, yes, what was that degree difference between those points? Because I'll go back. No, to heck with it. I said that in the beginning, when using the base, I used a more agricultural approach. A practical, let's get the work done, let's go for it. I still hold with that, although even then there will be times when once you've learnt something you will use the more elegant or sophisticated method, and often it will be better. I'm going to go back, this is a wee story, just a short one. When building, and virtually every single video I've ever seen, that teaches you how to square up a building, it uses the conventional wisdom or the more digital age method. You take two lines. How do you make them square to each other when you're out in the middle of a field somewhere? And of course, I'm going to say 99 times out of 100, people will use the 3-4-5 method. Why? Well, it works. It's shown itself to be reliable and robust. You cannot cock it up too much if you use the 3-4-5 method. Or the 0.5, probably being more now because I'm just a little bit older. A lot of people will use their calculators, their phones, or their drawing programs to work it out and find out what the diagonal of those two lines, if they know the lengths of those two lines. Yay! That's really, really good. I'm going to draw two lines. In fact, I'll draw a parallel from here, and I'll draw the line out to here because it's interfering with another guide. That intersection I draw out, it's of X length, and there, got no idea what those lines are. Now, if I use a 3-4-5 method, that it will work. In fact, I'm going to get rid of that line and draw a longer line. Much longer line. Okay. This is where not conventional wisdom or knowledge can work, and it's the only method I use now for squaring up a building. What is the length of that line? Don't care. Why? Well, kind of care. I'm going to measure it. Right? It's 4 meters and something. So I look in the bottom right hand corner, 4725. So I jot that down on a paper, 4725. Yeah. 3-4-5 method, fine. Not saying not use, don't use it. However, if I come out 4725, this measurement here, 4725, and scribe it on this line here, that is the maximum length I can possibly go for that line for it to be accurate. In this case, I'm just going to draw an arc just to show you. Oh, so this line here is slightly longer than that line there. So if I went, well, I can't go 5, I can go 4, or I can go 3 meters. 3, 4, 5 would work. But if I rotate that, if I know the length of that line, I rotate it round here, I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to bring up the calculator on my screen. The measurement is 4725. I know that measurement because it's the one that I've got there for that line, and I am going to multiply it by 1.414, and it's 668.1.15. Interesting. I've written that down on a bit of paper so I can recall, and I'm going to use, now knowing SketchUp, I know that the arc is, no, I'll leave that alone. There is a reason for what I was about to say. Remember the measurement, 6681.15? I'm going to take a line and look down in the bottom right hand corner, 6682. Why is there a difference? Well, that's pretty damn close. It's within, and that's why it's got the squiggly bit in front, the about, the geometry, and you wouldn't be able to get this as accurate on the building side, I can assure you. That line is the square root of the sum of these squares' sides. So it's the hypotenuse of these. And again, like the 3, 4, 5 method, it's mathematically and geometrically precise and accurate. And it's damn sight easier to use than the 3, 4, 5 method. I can show you. You need a calculator, or it's 1 meter, and I know that 1 meter is 1414 times whatever. So 1 meter, you get what I'm point. You multiply it by 4.725, which was the. I know it works very, very easily. But what was interesting is that measurement. I'll redo it. I'll get rid of that line. That measurement was, let's just say, it's showing it a little bit longer than the mathematical measurement I actually calculated. Knowing that, you have to ask yourself why. Well, why is SketchUp drawing about? It doesn't know where to draw the line accurately. It's precise because it goes from point to point. That is the definition of precision, but it's not accurate because I know that it should be that just ever so slightly, fractions of a millimeter. We're talking a couple of tenths of a few tenths of a millimeter shorter. Building site, you don't care about it. Anyway, I've digressed. Lots. In SketchUp 2, you've got to be careful using the arc tool that you don't buy. In that case, it shouldn't have mattered because it went from point to point. Here we go. I digress. How many sections has this arc got? 12. As a 90-degree line, it will go from point to point. Now, we know a circle is not points, but SketchUp draws it like that. At 90 degrees, it will be accurate, as much as SketchUp can draw it. But if we were to have something that's not 90 degrees, and you can't use the method I was just talking about, but if your line were to bisect one of these segments, it would throw out greatly your measurement. And I'm going to prove the point right now. This is more SketchUp drawing. 4725. Yay, that's what it should have been. Now I come to there, 4715. That's 10 millimeters different. Why? Because it is a section dimension, not from back here. So if I know that's correct and I measure it in and type it in 4725 and draw my line in, that's how much you'll be out. And you've got to know that when you're using the arc tool. What length is that line? It's going to be about 10 millimeters long. SketchUp drawing video, not a dome video. Well, okay. And so we're back to here, where in the next video, when I stop yakking, we're going to create a dome, a proper dome. Okay, that's 30 minutes of your life you'll never get back, and we'll be back on part 4, and we'll start to get to the bit that you probably wanted to look at anyway. Hopefully you've learnt something. What that will be, I'm not too certain, but there's lots of information that you need, just a bit like with the Paul Robinson thing. Where did he get his? Where did I get mine? Are they the same bits of information? No, I've got to take my progress from many people. He's the main one for me with the domes, and I can actually introduce other aspects of my knowledge that I've picked up in my 45, 50 years of building, and I can introduce it here, and you can take it and build your house, your dome, your SketchUp understanding from those nuggets. Okay, bye now.